Welcome to the Crush Cravings with Confidence podcast. I'm Coach Lisa Callahan, a recovered emotional eater. I ended decades of self-inflicted struggles with food through taking a journey of self-discovery, which revealed the secrets of what was going on underneath the food. Throughout this podcast, we'll explore topics that are rarely talked about, like low self-esteem, lack of confidence, people-pleasing, and decades of self-sabotaging behaviors. Rather than just focusing on the food, we'll dive deeper into aspects of who you are as a person and how you ended up relying on food for comfort to begin with. My mission is simple: to empower women to regain their confidence and prioritize self-love, regardless of the number on the scale. Discover what you've really been craving, and trust me, it's not about the food. This podcast is based on insights shared from the Women's Emotional Eating Community Support Group on Facebook, so be sure to check out the show notes for the link to the group and a complimentary gift just for you. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Hey, welcome to another fun and insightful episode of the Crush Cravings with Confidence podcast. The topic today is 5 tips to ease overwhelm and overcome overeating. This is going to be an amazing episode because I know that during this time of year, which is October, and we're really headed towards Halloween really soon, and probably actually by the time this comes out, it will actually be past Halloween. And I don't know about you, but during the holiday season, starting with Halloween, I always started to feel really anxious and overwhelmed because I felt like there had to be so many things that just had to get done. I had kids in school, I had work stuff, you were ending out the year, you were trying to get everything done, and everybody seemed to be in this hustle and bustle, this just crazy kind of feeling, and everything felt like it was running so high and so fast that it was easy to get swept up in the overwhelm. And then it was also easy to basically say to yourself, well, you know what? I can't deal with it right now. And so it doesn't really matter what I do. And I'm just going to take this, 3-month hiatus from taking care of myself, and I'll start over again in January. And if you're anything like me, that is what I felt like year after year after year. So during this holiday season, and it really doesn't matter what time of the year you're listening to this podcast episode, but it just has something to do with that feeling of having this overwhelming life and having things just pile on, and you just feel like you're caught under the undertow, and like life is just like throwing you a bunch of curveballs and you're just having to dodge them right and left. So I thought that it would be really nice to have an episode about how to ease the overwhelm so that way you don't want to overeat. That's the thing. Emotional eating is actually not about the food. And I know a lot of people think that it is. It's just really not. And a lot of times people think, well, it's about the food, and if I could just control myself better, then I'll be okay. But the thing is that things in life are always going to happen. So the one thing that has to stay steady is that you have to want to take care of yourself as you would a friend. Think about if you had a baby. You wouldn't leave the house without the baby's food with you, and yet you'll kind of run around all over the place and say, oh, I can't pick up anything but fast food and junk food and snacks and crackers and chips and stuff because I just didn't have enough time for myself. But the thing is again, if you had a baby with you, like a baby that ate formula and had baby food and like couldn't even eat all that junk food yet, you would never forget to pack that baby food, right? So why is it that when you're doing things that are, consuming your time, that like you're the one thing that you happen to skip out on and you happen to forget about? So this episode is really going to help you with that if that is your habit, if that is your go-to. And at the end of November, actually in the middle of November, we're going to be having a masterclass that's all about habit busters. So somewhere in the show notes here, if you're listening to it at the right time of year, and if it's the time for the masterclass, you're going to see a link to be able to sign up for the Habit Busters masterclass. And if you are listening to this at a different time of year, please go ahead and send me a DM that says habits, and I will send you a copy of that masterclass once it comes out. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into this episode. So 5 tips to ease overwhelm so that you can overcome overeating. And I'm just going to give you the 5 tips right off the hop, and then we'll talk about them. So as always, if you want to get a pen and paper, you want to write some things down, this would be the time to grab that unless you're driving. All right. So tip number 1 is to regain energy so that you can understand your emotional energy and what you're giving your emotional energy to. And I'm going to go over these one by one, but I'm going to read them out loud first. So that way you can get a gist of what we're going to be talking about today. And everything that I have to talk about is so valuable. All of it is important. So please listen to the whole episode. Even if you have to start it and stop it again, it doesn't really matter. It's always going to be here for you to listen to. Tip number 2, prioritize yourself. Make time for self-care amidst all the chaos. Like the chaos is always going to be there. The self-care has to be constant, just like that baby that I was talking about before. Like you have to be the most important thing in your life, period. It doesn't matter what's going on around you. It just matters that you're the most important thing. And that way you're not going to forget to prioritize yourself and put yourself first when all of the chaos comes swooping in, which it will. This is life, right? All right. Tip number 3, reduce stress. So to minimize anxiety, we're going to part ways with some of the old coping mechanisms. A lot of times we tell ourselves that I just can't cope with it all, and that your coping mechanism is to go and eat a bunch of greasy, fried, fast food, junk food, chips, chocolate, all that stuff. And you tell yourself that that's the only thing that is adding comfort to your life. And yet on the flip side of that, you know that that's the very same thing that's making you feel awful about yourself. So it's a lie and it's a contradiction. And if you continue to do that contradiction, you're always going to feel like you're kind of just waiting for the other shoe to drop. So even if life is calm, and even if you feel like things are going well, you're still not going to feel like you're in alignment because you're always going to be anxious. And anxious is really just waiting for the future to happen. So you're always going to be caught in that feeling of like, okay, well, things are going really well right now, but I don't want to jinx myself. I'm just kind of waiting for the bad things to happen. And if that's the mindset that you're caught in, that's going to be really, really stressful. And if that's the stress that you're experiencing, it's no wonder that you want to eat to comfort yourself. So we have to be able to sort through that first. All right. Tip number 4 is improve eating habits, but we're going to talk about this in a little bit of a different way. The way that we want to talk about it, because like eating food is not like rocket science. Do you know the difference between an apple and a bag of chips, right? It's not like you understand that part. It's just that because you abandon yourself so quickly amidst all the overwhelm, then you kind of feel like, it doesn't matter. I'll worry about it later. Who cares? And you also get caught in what's called an all or nothing mindset, which means that if you're out somewhere and there happens to be pizza and some fries and you have some, you're like, whatever, I already screwed up. So now let me screw up more. And that's the part that we have to be able to get through, because it doesn't really matter whether or not you have a little bit of this and a little bit of that. It matters if you misalign your actions with your desires. So if you tell yourself, I'm not eating this, I don't want it, and then you do, you actually end up betraying yourself and you go against your own integrity. And that's what makes you feel bad. It's not the food. So what we have to do is we have to reverse engineer. And you have to be able to be okay with things not being exactly scientifically perfect all the time. When you're struggling with that all or nothing mindset, you are going to be caught in perfectionism. And perfectionism, and this is a quote that I got out of I want to say it was the Eat, Pray, Love book by Elizabeth Gilbert. And I think this is around how the quote goes. It says something like, perfectionism is fear, all dressed up in a fancy mink coat and high heels. And it always makes me feel interested to think about that version of it, because I used to pride myself in thinking that I had to do everything so perfect. But at the end of that, perfectionism, there really was fear of doing things wrong, of not, having maybe other people think that like I had my what together and feeling kind of like a failure before I even started. So none of that really worked well, even though I prided myself in it. Like I thought it was a really good thing. Ended up not so great when it came to the habits of putting myself first, prioritizing myself, spending my emotional energy wisely, and improving my eating habits because I had such an all or nothing mindset that I ended up grabbing for things. If it was just not going to be perfect, then I was like, who cares? But the thing is just like that baby I talked about earlier, you must put yourself first. You must care about yourself first. You must have a priority because why would you want to do something harmful for yourself? There's something underneath that if that's the case. So, the last tip is going to be to ignite positive thinking, to shift your mindset, to focus on what really matters. And once again, you're the center of your own universe. So, you have to matter first. And if you care about yourself as you would a friend, you would never want to feed yourself till you were nauseous, till you felt disgusted with yourself, till you had heartburn and acid reflux and you can't button your pants and you get on the scale and you feel lethargic and your knees hurt when you wake up in the morning and everything's aching in your body and you've got headaches and you just feel like you're heavy, you're weighed down. And so we have to be able to spend our emotional energy wisely so that you can shift your mindset to focus on what really matters, which is you, my friend. All right, so let's now dive into the tips for real. And I'll start back again with tip number one, which is to regain your energy. By the way, in the show notes, you're also going to find a link and you can actually download the tips here as I'm reading them. Like they are going to be in a free guide for you. And again, that free guide will link you towards taking that next step to join the free masterclass, which is called Habit Busters. All right. So tip number one, regain energy. So understanding your emotional energy. And I want you to think about it like this. Think about your emotional energy as a bank account. Think about a bank account where you put money in. You make deposits and you make withdrawals. So many people find themselves making far too many withdrawals than they do deposits. And when they make deposits, they might be making them on surface level things like, I don't know, getting a massage or, I get my nails done. That makes me happy. Or I watched my grandkids play a ball game. It's all great and everything. But at the same time, if you're ignoring like your emotional well-being, your spiritual well-being, if you're people pleasing, if you're saying yes when you wanted to say no, if you're gossiping behind someone's back, meaning you're kind of like, oh yeah, no problem. And then like to another person, you're like, can you believe she asked me to do that? And if you're contradicting your own integrity, then what that does is it leaves you in an emotional like debt. So if you're making more withdrawals than you are deposits, now this could come in the form of like keeping the news on all day, right? There's a lot of things that are going on in the world. And if you're focusing your energy on things that are sucking your energy away, or you're spending far too much time with someone who you're aggravated with and you just feel like you're judging what they're doing, or they're I don't know, they're not really fun to hang out with, but you are with a smile on your face and you're doing it anyways, all while you're rolling your eyes inside of your head thinking, oh gosh, this isn't great. Then what you're doing is you're actually taking your emotional energy away from yourself and you're not spending it wisely. So when the external factors are draining your emotional energy, I understand how frustrating that can be. So there's like a little saying, and actually have it at the end of all of my courses, Crush That Food Thing Self-Discovery System being the coaching community. But I know the very last lesson in Crush That Food Thing Self-Discovery System is called What's in My Cup? And it goes something like this. I don't have it verbatim, but just something like this. It says like, you're walking along and you're holding a cup of coffee when someone bumps into you, making you spill coffee everywhere. Wow, why did you spill coffee? Well, because someone bumped into me. Wrong answer. You spilled coffee because there was coffee in your cup. Now, had there been tea in your cup, you would have spilled tea. So that's the whole point of this. When life shakes you and bumps into you, which it will, what's going to spill out of you? Is it frustration and anger and resentment and regret and, you know, jealousy and comparison and like what's in there, right? So when somebody cuts you off in traffic, what are you screaming out of your mouth? Like what's coming out of you? And if you have joy and peace and serenity and, just humility and just like ease and empathy and kindness and compassion, not just for other people, for you, like what's inside of you, what's in your cup and what's going to spill out. And that'll let you know where you're at on your emotional withdrawals and deposits. So when life shakes you and rattles you, which it will, what spills out of you. And then you'll know if you're spending your emotional energy wisely. So that's going to be tip number one towards regaining some energy and also being able to ease overwhelm. All right. So tip number two is going to be about prioritizing your self-care. Okay. We talked a little bit about that baby and how you would never leave the house without the necessities for that baby. But for yourself, you'll be like, yeah, I didn't have time. And that's just never going to be okay. So, and certainly you've been on an airplane before. And if you haven't, I'll clue you in. They make an announcement at the beginning and it's a safety announcement. And it basically says if there's a state of emergency that you're going to want to put on your own oxygen mask first before you help someone else. Now, why do they tell you that? They tell you that because if you are applying so much of your energy and so much of your attention and so much of yourself to others, if you don't have on your own oxygen mask first, you're simply not going to be able to help others the way that you want to. So this ends up becoming a challenge for yourself when you are taking care of so many people and you're doing so many things and you're working so hard at being perfect at everything, but it actually takes away from your own self-care. And then you sort of blame everything else, not really meaning to. I mean, it's not like you want to blame everything else. I mean, you end up doing it because you're like, I have no time. I'm so busy. I speak to women. We have over 5,000 women in the Women's Emotional Eating Community Support Group. And if you're not part of that community on Facebook, there'll be a link in the show notes to be able to join that. But we have over, like, I think it's 5,200 women in there right now. And I hear it all the time. I have asked women, hey, like, would you like me to send you a training? And they're like, sure, send it, but I probably won't be able to watch it for 2 months because I'm just so busy at work right now. Things are crazy. I get that response so many times that it's absolutely unbelievable that somebody wouldn't want to be making time for themselves to just like listen to something, right? Because they're so busy taking care of everyone else, so busy doing things that there is not 1 second of the day that is squeezed out for them, that's carved out for them. So many of us have been taught as children that focusing on ourselves is actually selfish. But this belief can leave you feeling really overwhelmed and really bad about yourself when you end up hitting that boiling point. Then you burst over, you're yelling at people, maybe you're crying, maybe you're telling people that they just don't understand you, you feel super lonely. And then, it's because you don't feel like deserving of being able to put yourself first. So you put everybody else first, then you run out of oxygen, then you boil over, and then you say something or you do something that you later will regret. And a lot of times that's what ends you up on that couch, numbing yourself with the television, scrolling on Facebook, chips in your lap, food in the middle of the night, staying up too late, and then you're exhausted for the next day. So it's like you're not setting yourself up for a peaceful, experience for your next day if you're so overwhelmed, and that's leading you to make poor choices for yourself. So in the midst of chaos, Even if you have to just go into, like, I don't know, your car, a bathroom, a closet. And I'll give you a little like meditation that you can do if you feel like you're completely just like knocking yourself out and you're super overwhelmed. This is a little meditation that I learned from one of my most favorite people in the world. I'm going to give a shout out to Amy Kenny. I absolutely love this woman. And she came into my Crush That Food Thing self-discovery system and did a presentation, which I think we'll bring out sometime soon. It was really cool. It was called Meditation Your Way. And Amy went ahead and showed us about, I don't know, 10 different ways that you can meditate, because I don't know about you. I used to be a really, like, I don't know, super, super duper busy woman. I am actually super busy now. It's just that I do prioritize myself, so it just doesn't feel the same way. I used to also kind of bounce off the walls, almost like a overactive, mindset. So it was really hard for me to sit still. And there was a couple of times where I thought maybe I'll decide to try meditation. But like the second I closed my eyes, like my eyeballs were like pinging inside of my, head. And I really couldn't sit still for like 2 seconds. It almost like scared me a little, because I was like, wow, I can't even sit still for 2 seconds. This is crazy. But it was because like my mind was on overdrive and I had so many things in my head going on that were really, a lot of them were not even about me. They were perhaps about other people and things that I couldn't change and things in the future and things from the past. And I was ruminating and worrying, and like, it's just a lot. So this little meditation is really cool. And all you have to do, and if you're not driving, you can do it with me. All you have to do is take your thumb and your first finger together. So your pointer finger together, and you just say the word peace. And then you take your thumb and your middle finger and you say be. And then you take your thumb and your ring finger and you say with. And then you take your thumb and your pinky and you say me. So we can do it together about 3 times, and it goes like this. Peace be with me. Peace be with me. Peace be with me. I absolutely love that one. You can do it anywhere. You can do it when you're falling asleep. You can do it when you're driving, staying awake. You could do it under your desk at office. You could do it while the kids are having a meltdown and you're not having a meltdown, because you've got peace with you, right? And then the little tapping of your fingers is a really cool thing. So thank you, Amy Kenny, for sharing that. So when life gets busy and you feel like self-care is going to take a back seat, make certain that you do invest time in doing something for yourself that replenishes and refreshes your energy. So that way you won't have to feel like you're doing things, like right or wrong, that you'll just be able to stay inside of yourself, peaceful and calm and connected. And that way you'll be able to make really good decisions for yourself, even in the midst of overwhelm. Okay. All right, next one we are going to do is tip number 3 is to reduce stress. Sometimes we can say, like if it's on your plate, it's because you've ordered it. So that's a saying that we talk about in Crush That Food Thing Self-Discovery System, which is, again, our coaching program. And there's always going to be a link in the chat that you can book a free call with me to talk about Crush That Food Thing Self-Discovery System and see how we can help you to be able to crush your food thing through taking a journey of self-discovery. But the cool thing about this saying, if it's on your plate, it's because you've ordered it. And sometimes people get ticked off with me when I say that, because they say to me, well, Lisa, I didn't order that flat tire. I didn't order my husband screaming at me this morning, or I didn't order, my, I don't know, kid getting suspended from school or anything, right? It's not that. Sometimes we can jump lanes and we can start to take ownership of other people's problems. And that's when things come on your plate that you didn't necessarily order. And the only way to get them off of your plate is to be able to stay in your own sense of self even in the midst of other things going on, right? Every single person has something going on in their life, and every single person has something going on that they know someone else has going on in their life. And even literally, if you were sitting alone for decades in front of your television, you see the things that are going on in the world. So, I mean, that could become a problem as well, right? And so that's just it. If it's on your plate, it's because you've ordered it, because those feelings inside of you are spilling out. And we would have to be able to get to the roots of why it is that you would be taking ownership of things that you cannot change. So I know that nobody invites like stress and anxiety into their life. And yet many of us also do this thing where we take on too many things that are not ours because we don't know how to set clear boundaries. A lot of times we don't know how to say no. We feel pressured. Again, somebody comes and asks you for a favor and you're kind of like, sure, I'll do it. No problem. Oh, please, airport at 1 a.m. I got you. No problem. But it's because we're afraid to say no, because we're afraid of that other person maybe being mad at us, or we avoid conflict at all costs, and these things come with a price because they end up putting things on your plate that make you feel drained and make you feel like you're really just like the last person on your to-do list. And oftentimes that kind of pressure leaks into coping habits like emotional eating. And all of that has to do with the avoidance of actually spiritually growing. So that way you can recognize with awareness, like, why do I not have clear boundaries? How come I'm not okay saying no when I want to? Why do I avoid conflict at all costs? And what is the cost for me? Like, what's the price that I'm paying if I'm going to avoid this conflict? Like, it comes back to you. And then if you're the one that's using, again, food to cope from it because you've got all of this stress on your plate that you ended up ordering simply because you haven't been able to break through the roots of why it is that you would be saying yes to things and don't have the boundaries that you want to set and perhaps are fearful of conflict, like that's the only thing that you can actually change for yourself. Actually, there's a quote from Viktor Frankl, who wrote the book, The Man's Search for Meaning. And the quote goes something like this. He says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And it's within that space that you have the ability to respond to any given set of circumstances with love and kindness for yourself. And that's not the exact quote. You can certainly look it up, but it definitely has something to do with that. And in Crush That Food Thing Self-Discovery System, one of the things, again, that we teach is the word responsibility. A lot of times people think that that's like a drag word. We're like, responsibility, that's horrible. I hate it. But if you could just like reverse the word and just look at it as responsibility is your ability to respond to yourself with love and kindness, then you'll recognize that some of the stress that you have is actually on your plate because you've ordered that stress because you're not yet able to respond to yourself with love and kindness because you're putting other people before you. And that's never going to work out well. Sounds super nice on paper. It's just that it's going to end up draining you and you're going to end up doing things like that are harmful to yourself and actually end up being harmful to others because you'll end up losing your temper. You'll end up getting frustrated. You'll end up saying things that you don't mean. All right, the next one is improve eating habits. Now, I know that when you're under intense stress, it feels really difficult to, grab that apple or that, weigh out that piece of chicken or, measure a half a cup of whatever, right? It just feels like it's like, blech, I don't even care about it. It's not a big deal. Who cares? Whatever, I'll worry about tomorrow. But when that habit is happening day after day after day, which oftentimes it does by about 3 or 4 o'clock or like right after work, where you say you're going to do one thing and then you don't end up doing another, you're not setting yourself up to actually like feel good from the inside when every day it's like you're throwing yourself under that bus. And it starts with the promises that you make to yourself. So it's like, if you're going to make a promise to yourself, at least know that you're going to keep it. And if you know you're not going to keep it, don't make the promise to yourself, because that's part of how you'll drain your emotional energy, because that's where you sort of like say one thing, then you can't seem to do it. So you disappoint yourself. And then over and over again, you feel like you failed. So if, you want some thoughts about this, like the first thing to do is actually just don't make the promises to yourself. Just like stay in the present moment and like see how every moment goes. So that way, if you can make decisions for yourself that keep you in alignment with your integrity all the time, just like that baby, right? You wouldn't walk out of the house without the formula, without the diapers, without the thing that the baby needs. Baby yourself, like actually like treat yourself with love and kindness. So kind of just know that instead of like throwing in the towel and just now shoveling food in your mouth that doesn't align with your purpose and certainly doesn't support the promises that you make to yourself, like you want this one thing, you want to be healthy, you want to stay alive longer, you want to have energy, you want to feel better, you want your, arthritis to go away, all that stuff. Well, that comes with putting supportive fuel into your body, because it's not, again, rocket science. Like, what to eat. And a lot of times when we get caught in that all or nothing mindset, and then we go on these super strict diets and eating plans, and then we become frustrated with ourselves because it's impossible to stay on that. So a lot of times when people are struggling with overwhelm and with overeating, they kind of feel like they have to go on a diet to lose weight first so that then they can feel good about themselves. You've got it all backwards. It's not a matter of you going on a diet to lose weight to feel good about yourself. What you have to do is you have to feel good about yourself first, so that then you naturally want to make decisions for yourself that support your best interest in the moment. So when you're sitting there and you're just like waking up in the morning and nothing's happened during your day, you haven't had all the overwhelm, you haven't had all the stress, and you're sitting there and you're like, okay, today's the day that I'm going to do great. But you've got all of this garbage inside of your, body already. And somebody ticks you off. Somebody says the thing that, makes you mad. There's traffic. There's, your boss is, overwhelming, asking you to do things. Your kid, calls from school and you have to pick them up, but you have no time. All that stuff, right? And so again, like, what's spilling out of you and how much energy are you going to have to apply to yourself? And so what we have to do is we have to be able to work from the roots on the inside of you. So that way, when all that stuff in life happens, you're not going to abandon yourself, because honestly, when you think about it clearly, if you're in like distress, if you're having like major like emergency situations in your life, wouldn't you think that that would be the best time to take care of yourself? Like, wouldn't you think that it would be the most important time to put like supportive fuel into your body? That would be the most important time, because that's the time that you will require the most of yourself, right? So it doesn't make sense when you just abandon ship, you abandon yourself, you like leave yourself drowning in the water without a life vest. That's not fair. And when you're treating yourself like that over and over and over again, there is a subconscious reason. There is a root to this. There's a craving for that feeling of emptiness, for that feeling of abandonment or guilt or shame or disappointment or regret or whatever it is. It's there. And we can actually help you solve that mystery by working with us in Crush That Food Thing Self-Discovery System. And that's a cool way to be able to understand the root causes of your problems. We can help you fix this. We have actually proven this over and over. And I am the first client, so I know that this is fixable because I have fixed it for myself. I struggle with emotional eating for 30 years. Everything that I'm sharing with you today, I have dealt with myself. So I used to use food as a coping mechanism. Now I don't. And trust me, the things still happen. It's just that I navigate through them in a different way. And if I do get caught in a narrow mindset, or I get frustrated or, pissed off at something, I am a human being. I don't stay in that space for a long time, and I always see my part. And so that's a really cool thing that I wasn't aware of before. I would just get angry and then I would kind of withdraw, or I would get manipulative, or I would shut down in certain ways. And I always use food as a coping mechanism, and I no longer do that. All right, last tip. This one is called Ignite Positive Thinking. So many of us work really hard at changing our habits, yet we hold on to a lot of beliefs about ourselves that actually are meant to keep us stuck. So the key to real change is shifting your mindset, opening up your mindset, and allowing yourself to focus on what truly matters. Sometimes there's a saying that I also share in Crush That Food Thing Self-Discovery System. We have a list. They're not all my sayings by any means, as you see. Like I have a million quotes from a million people, and yet in my group they're really cute. They call them Lisa-isms, even though they're not all my isms, that's for sure. But they are things that like can be applied to every single solitary moment in your life, and they always ring true as long as you can have an open mindset. Perhaps you've heard in the past that there are certain mindsets that can be fixed, where you kind of think that this is just how it is. I was just born this way. There's no change in, this is, I've been this way for my whole life. I'm 60 years old, whatever. And there's also a growth mindset. And so one of the very first things that I learned in self-discovery, and this was really, really like a pivotal moment in my headspace, was that I don't have to believe everything that I'm thinking. Just because that I think something doesn't necessarily make it true. The other thing that I learned was that just because someone else says something also doesn't make it true. So like sometimes I would think like someone else would say something and then I had to believe that about myself. And then I realized, wow, hang on a minute. I don't have to believe that at all. I can believe what makes my mind feel really aligned and what helps me stay connected with my purpose. So that way, when life feels overwhelming, it is really easy to get caught into those narrow thoughts, but just know that when you get into a narrow mindset, it's just always a trigger. And a trigger is just an unhealed part of yourself. And that's something else that we teach in Crush That Food Thing Self-Discovery System. We teach you how to do something called healing frozen emotions. And that's something that you're not going to hear out there. It's actually a creation of my training. And so that's something that we do in Crush That Food Thing Self-Discovery System, because sometimes your beliefs, I didn't create limiting beliefs by any means. But that's kind of what it is, where you just sort of believe like one way of thinking. And sometimes it's an immature version of yourself. So like a younger version of yourself. And it shapes how we like see the world and then how we navigate through it. And with that being said, it will also bring you negative energy. And again, if you've got too many withdrawals from your emotional bank account, well, that's going to put you in debt, emotional debt. And that really sucks because that leaves you feeling empty. And then you feel like you have to fill yourself with food. But just ask yourself that whole filling yourself with food thing. And I used to feel that way too. Just ask yourself, how is that way working for you? So what you're going to first do with giving yourself more positive energy is you're just going to shift your mindset to give yourself permission to change your thoughts. Like that's it. You just have to say to yourself, oh, hang on a minute. Is this thought that I'm thinking right now, if I keep thinking this forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, is that going to help me grow? Or if I keep thinking that thought forever and ever and ever, is that thought actually meant to keep me stuck? And so that's something that you can ask yourself. And if you can move through that, you'll see that you will be able to manage all of the stress that comes your way in a much more empowered way. And once you can get a taste of your own power and realize that you don't have to be just swept away in this way and that way when you feel overwhelmed, you don't have to. Once you can feel more aligned with your integrity, put yourself first, stay in your own lane, don't put things on your plate that aren't yours to put there, and be able to focus your attention on what you want, not on what you don't want, then you'll be able to have a much better chance at having a positive mindset and being able to ease overwhelm so that you can overcome overeating. All right. So that wraps up another episode of the Crush Cravings with Confidence podcast. As always, there are always ample opportunities for you to work with us. We have a couple of things in the show notes. So you're going to see, first of all, if you're listening to this in October 2024, we are going to have a link to be able to download the tips as a free guide. From there, you can go ahead and grab the Masterclass, which is going to be coming up November 12th, I think. And that'll be a link that you can sign up for that as well. There's always going to be a link to book a free call for Crush That Food Thing Self-Discovery System, which is called a Food Freedom Call. And you'll always have a few different bite-sized pieces of courses that you can start with right away. The one that I recommend to start with, really, really great course, is called the Mindset Makeover, which is amazing. It's very affordable and something that everybody will want to take the opportunity to do. We also have another one called the Confidence Mastery Mini Course. There's a few others in the show notes that you can just kind of review. And as always, send me a message. Leave me a comment here. I love, when I see that there's like 6 comments, I'm like, yay, I just love it. Please share this episode, share the podcast with at least 3 friends, post it on your walls, grab the, channel links and like the content, leave me a message, tell me that you got something out of this. That just lights me up from the inside out. So thank you so much for listening, and we will see you in the next episode. Bye for now. All right, my beautiful friend, that brings us to the end of another episode from the Crush Cravings with Confidence podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening today and took something from our conversation that you are going to put into immediate action. I love spending time with you and would be so grateful if you would share this podcast with at least one friend today who you think might be struggling too. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any other amazing topics. And please, please do leave me a review. It would mean the world to me. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.